Hi, and welcome to Talking Wildfire. Today we have Murry Taylor back, and I'm going to talk about an interesting subject with him. Wildfire issues are being faced around the globe. My channel is about giving voices a chance to be heard internationally, discussing these issues. Today, Murry Taylor is going to give us a talk about fire issues that are very important to him, and these are safety and fire tactics. This is Murry Taylor.
Okay, thanks again, Mike. I'm glad we got together again here. This whole story here began, I was part of an email thread of a bunch of old fire dogs, some real big names here in Region 5. Ex-Forest supervisors, Ted Stubblefield, Phil Awney was head resource person down on the Tahoe. Dave Nelson was the fire management officer of the Tahoe. Bill Durr, fire investigator for Los Angeles County for years. There was just a huge name of old fire dogs that were in it for a long time. Michael Raines, deputy chief, who's put out this, thing, the call to action, and been sent to Washington quite a few times. This email thread was a bunch of people coming together to try to get the Forest Service to understand that the way things had changed with fire, they had to get back. They couldn't be putting these big blocks around fire and attempting this managed fire thing because it was resulting in too many fires getting away. And this outfit was really pushing. It also came from a local group here, right in Fort Jones, where I live, 10 air miles away. Larry Alexander, Bruce Courtwright, and retired ranger Ray Hopp got involved, and Larry and Bruce formed here the National Wildfire Institute. And they had a lot of effect on wildfire policy. My God, it was amazing to come from a little cow town like it did. And anyway, that email thread kept talking and talking. And one of the guys on it was Guy McMahon. He was an activist over in Brookings, very unhappy with how the Rogue River Siskiyou handled the Chetco Bar fire. The fact that it's at 13 days, and they didn't do anything. And then they finally, airline turned it in enough times. They sent this is the story I heard, and Chuck also. They sent a rappel crew out there. And they rappelled down, they cut a hill a spot, and went down to the fire and came around and said they had to get out of there and leave because the leaves were too slick. This is the true story. You can check with Chuck. It was too steep and too slick or something. And so, like Chuck Shealy said, well, God put a clump pump in there and a helicopter and washed the thing off the hill. It was only like 4 acres then or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, since they didn't do that, this was a big stir. And this is how I heard about Merv George, because Guy McMahon was beginning to praise Merv. So then I got a hold of Merv, and I called up there, and I got arranged. Chuck Shealy came up here all the way from Chico, and we went up there, and we interviewed Merv and Dan for this article that I wrote. It's in the April 2022 issue of the Smokejumper magazine. You can get online and look in the archives there, and the article's called "Standing Tall, Making a Difference." Merv told me, even before we had the interview, that he was sent there to quote-unquote fix the problem. Merv George Jr. is a Hoopa Indian fellow. He was hired by Randy Moore, now maybe 12 years ago, because when we first entered him was 9 or 10. And he had some skills, as he put it, and I'm convinced that the man does. In his meeting there, his FMO, Mike Quinones, jumped out of Redmond in 2000, I know. 2001, I'm not sure Mike's total time in jumping. But so we interviewed these guys. And what they did that drew the attention of Chuck and I and a lot of people was that they instituted a new fire danger rating system that went beyond the national one that they could look to themselves. They thought was more serve their purposes better. They only had one rappel crew, and they doubled the size of the rappel crew they didn't have very many engines. God, it was just amazing. But what they started doing, if they had a lightning event come through, they would fly the Redmond jumpers down there, sit them on the airport in Medford. And when the storm moved through, they'd put them in the air right in behind the storm and empty the plane. So they started doing the aggressive IA with a capital A. And they made some other choices too. My experience here on the Klamath up until a few years ago was that, well, for one thing, they didn't run night shifts, except on that one fire way back in 2013. I think at the end they did run them up on the Marble Valley area up here in the wilderness. But anyway, for the most part, they didn't. And certainly they didn't hike at night here on the Klamath. But Mervyn Dan told us, we tell our crews now, look, if you go out there and it's getting dark and you see your smoke up the hill a mile or two, if you want to get tooled out and head up there, it's your call. We'll back you up all the way. And then Dan added that he was backing his people up that way. And then Merv says, and then I'm backing Dan up all the way too. If Dan backs up his people, I'm backing Dan. And so there you had it. There's the line authority backing up the people in the field, making the call. So I came back here and I was thinking about that, writing that article for the Smokejumper magazine. And at a time I started writing a book about Too Steep and Too Rough, just like it says in the preface of the book there. And I actually gave it up because I thought it was a subject that was possibly too politically sensitive and too complicated and could just muddy the waters in a way and make some bad feelings and possibly accomplish nothing at all. So I gave it up. And that was hard because I'd worked on it for over a year. I had some time in on it. But then when I heard this story, then I'm on the lookout one day, and Dan Quinones calls me, the FMO, and we talked about it, and he said this. Yeah, our program's working really great. We're going around with smiles on our faces. Our crews are having fun. And Mike, that's what really impressed me, because if you fight fire aggressively and let these kids make their decisions, let them go out and choose that hard assignment, it turns them on and they get in touch with the best part of this job, which is being extra tough, doing your extra stuff, suffering that hardship, but getting in there and finding out something about yourself you always wished was there, that you're pretty tough and you're pretty strong, really, and you can be, and that's why you came in the first place. This is so then I said to myself, by God, then I got to write this book. I got to write this book because I'm going to write a story about going around with smiles on your faces and what it does to a fire cadre that becomes energized and vitalized by accomplishment. Certainly, the love of fire, I'm sure you'll agree, is built in IA, in successful IA. When those kids go out there and it's 2 a.m. and their guts hurt and their knees burn because they've been working so hard, they're running tank after tank, they're eating smoke and kind of hating themselves for getting in such a mess. And then, they work along up to the top, and somewhere around 2 a.m, they'll come through the smoke and meet that other crew on the other side, and they raise their chainsaws in the air and give them the old, And then I remember once up in Idaho on the border right there on the corner of Idaho and over in Washington. It was in Washington on the Colville district. I'm just a couple miles from Idaho and a couple miles from Canada on the Sullivan Lake district. We sat there in the morning and the sun came up in the east, and we all sat there. There was 40 jumpers from Redmond, 2 loads from Redmond, 1 from Winthrop and 1 from Reading. And we had some AK guys. But when that sun came up, had little fires. We made our coffee. You know what that's like, Mike. Those are those special moments when you're part of something special. And so I think that's what's happened on the Rogue River Siskiyou. That's the article we wrote. I got some great responses from Hotshot Soups. One was Rusty Whitwer, great hotshot soup of the Hobart Hotshots on the Tahoe, the black shirts, and some good vibes off of the Alaska Hotshot cruise. I want to tell a story. Like I said in the book, the great repository of wildfire experience and knowledge lies in the hotshot soups. I believe that. You look back at all the great soups, there's many, many, many. And there's that book, I don't know, the Soups Handbook, that the Angie Tom book. Do you know that book? Angie
Yeah.
Tom book, the hotshot, that's the Soups Handbook is pretty cool because it's got all those guys in there, Ted Matheson, it's got Tony Escobar, it's got Paul Gleason. It was a great idea. She should have had it edited a little more, but Charlie Caldwell, a lot of those, Jim Cook, Mark Linnane, Stan Stewart, these big names in hotshots. I never was a hotshot, but I worked with a lot that came to jumping. So I wanted to honor it, and that's the reason I wrote. But the Rogue River Siskiyou and what they did, and I talked the other day, I got some calls from people, hotshots up in Alaska, that were down in Central Oregon, and they were just having a ball and saying, "Man, things have changed here in Region 6. They've turned this loose over here." And we caught 4 fires in one day, just getting on the radio, finding out where they were, and going out unsupervised and catching them. And another story. Okay, yeah, these hotshot crews up in Oregon were giving me a call. They were just talking on the radio and talking to district dispatch about where these fires. They picked up 4 fires in one day, and one was 17 acres. There were roads out, and it was pretty good country. It was out in that broken sagebrush and scattered juniper and some fir and stuff. But then the next day, they were on a fire that was 200 acres by themselves, and a guy comes along on a 4-wheeler, all dusty, all dirty and stuff, and he's talking to the hotshot soup foreman there out of Alaska, and they're talking about this and what they're going to do, and they go up the road together in ways and come back and make a plan. So this guy takes off, and then a couple other engines show up, and pretty soon this guy comes back and talks. This is more toward the mid-afternoon, and they've made good progress on this fire. And the guy, the hotshot soup from Alaska, goes, "Well, who are you anyway? You're out here just with, who are you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm the FMO. I'm the fire management officer on the Ochiko National Forest." And so when I told that story to Dan Quinona, says, "Yeah, I know that guy." He gave me his name. He said, "We're great pals. He came to my retirement party a month ago." So, I have to believe, and I told Dan then, and I told Merv in an email, and I did get in touch with Dan. Merv's probably too busy, but I actually think, Mike, there's a lot of good people in the Forest Service out there trying to do their best. I know that, and you do too. And they've been hamstrung a lot in a lot of what's going on. But I actually think that Merv, now being deputy in charge of fire up in Region 6, is part of this whole thing. I have to believe that. I really do. And who knows where it'll go? Who knows? There's pushback and this and that. But anyway, that's why I wrote Too Steep and Too Rough. It profiles what I think are the essential problems with the Forest Service today, and what I call a back off and slack off approach to fire. I have seen improvements here on the Klamath in the last 2 years. There's no doubt about it. There was an admission by the former forest supervisor that they had been remiss in not doing as much rapid IA because it burned up so much big country. They used jumpers a lot last year. They jumped 13 fires last year. And I don't know if you know this, but this is a quick add-on, and then I got to go to this meeting. That in the years of 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003, the Forest Service contingent, the whole Smokejumper thing, 430 of them, and this is like 130 of them are BLM. They only averaged 4 fire jumps a season, Mike. 4 for those seasons. I don't know what. I think it's coming up. I need to check, but I know Redding came up for sure. But my God, that's terrible that we used to average twice that. You know, there were years when people jumped. The most I ever think, I think, was 17, but a lot of guys jumped 20 and some even 25 in the big years. But anyway, that's when I wanted to write Too Steep and Too Rough. And you can get online on Amazon, look up the book and look at the reviews and see what people say about it. I hope it's done some good.
Well, Murray, thanks for your time today and telling us about the background of Too Steep and Too Rough. And if people want to look for your book, I'll also have it in a link with your other books so that they can go there and purchase it. Thanks again,
Mike.
Murray.
Hey, thanks you, and good morning, Australia. And I'll save this link, so we'll be good to go if you want to talk some more in the future.
Sounds good, Murray.
Hey, Mike, and thanks for all your work and all your commitment.
We're doing this for all of you. If you like what we're doing, please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment below. See you next time.